A man who needs volume to be heard already knows his words carry no weight. The tension you feel around loud men isn't fear or respect, it's the discomfort of witnessing insecurity trying to disguise itself as strength. When your voice stays calm while others rise, it reveals something they cannot imitate. It isn't weakness, it is control, and control is authority. Hold that truth for a moment, because what follows will show why silence speaks harder than noise. Lesson 1. The authority of presence over volume is the first truth behind why strong men speak without raising their voice, and why loud men reveal their weakness the moment they try to dominate a room through noise. When a man depends on volume, he confesses that his words cannot stand on their own. He needs force because he lacks foundation. But when your tone remains calm, steady, and controlled, the room adjusts to you instead of you adjusting to the room. Why does quiet speech make people lean in instead of pull away? Why does restraint create weight where shouting creates resistance? Presence speaks before the mouth ever opens. A man who has mastered himself no longer competes for space. He occupies it. Others fill silence because they fear what might surface inside it. They rush to speak, to interrupt, to insist, to prove they exist through sound. You let the moment breathe, and in that space their confidence collapses. They become exposed, not because you attacked them, but because you refuse to participate in their noise. This is not passivity. It is control over the one battlefield that matters first, the self. Strong men understand that authority is not taken through force. It is revealed through composure. Think of a negotiation, a confrontation at work, an argument where someone raises their voice, leans forward, tries to intimidate. You do not mirror their intensity. You keep your words slow, precise, grounded. Who looks desperate? Who looks centered? Time has already tested this pattern. The man who shouts is trying to convince himself. The man who remains calm already knows where he stands. Loud men chase respect. Quiet men command it. Not because they demand obedience, but because certainty carries its own gravity. There is a moment when silence unsettles the insecure. They mistake it for weakness until they realize it is a mirror. Their noise bounces back at them. Their agitation grows. They speak faster. They repeat themselves. They search for validation in every raised syllable. You remain still. Your breathing stays even. Your words arrive only when necessary. And when you finally speak, the contrast cuts deeper than any shout could. Calm is not softness. Calm is strength under discipline. One sentence like that, delivered without force, can end the noise without confrontation. Ask yourself, when have you felt the urge to raise your voice? Was it clarity or frustration? Was it certainty or insecurity demanding acknowledgement? Strong men refuse to negotiate their dignity for volume. They do not rush to defend themselves against every challenge. They do not perform masculinity through aggression. They let reality do the speaking while they hold their ground. Authority rooted in presence does not announce itself. It is simply recognized, and this recognition does something subtle to the room. People slow down. They measure their words. They sense a line they cannot cross, even if you never declare it aloud, because real strength is not heard first. It is felt. Lesson 2. Calm speech as a test of inner stability is not about sounding gentle or composed for appearances. It is about exposing the difference between strength and fragility in the way a man carries his voice. In a world where loud men try to prove authority by forcing sound into the room, the man who speaks calmly shows something louder than volume: control over himself. The title says it clearly. Strong men speak without raising their voice, and loud men are weak. And nowhere is this more visible than in the moments when pressure rises and your tone does not. Why does calm speech unsettle those who depend on noise? Why does stillness reveal what shouting tries to hide? When your voice remains steady under stress, you demonstrate that your emotions answer to you instead of dragging you into reaction. A man who needs to raise his voice does not trust his own words to stand without force. He leans on noise because he cannot lean on discipline. But a man who speaks calmly under pressure proves that his center does not move just because the situation does. Stability does not shout. That single line divides those who carry authority from those who imitate it. Picture an argument where someone tries to provoke you. Their tone rises, their breathing shortens, their gestures expand. They want escalation because escalation hides their imbalance. If you match their volume, you descend to the same ground. But when you answer with measured tone, something different happens. Their aggression loses momentum. Their certainty weakens. They begin to hear themselves. Silence around your voice becomes a mirror, and what they see in it unsettles them more than any counterattack could. Who is stronger in that moment? The man who explodes outward, or the man who remains anchored within? There are men who believe that being heard requires force. They confuse intimidation with respect and reaction with influence. But time has already proven the opposite pattern. The men whose words endure are the ones who do not rush, do not tremble, do not inflate their sound to compensate for internal emptiness. Calm speech becomes a test they cannot pass. It exposes the distance between appearance and substance. It reveals how easily noise collapses when it is not met with more noise. Ask yourself what happens inside you when you feel the urge to raise your voice. Do you feel stronger in that instant, or less in control? Does the desire to shout come from clarity, or from the discomfort of being confronted by your own emotions? Strong men refuse to let impulse dictate tone. They let the moment tighten around them without breaking their composure. They allow words to arrive slowly, as if each one has weight that does not need assistance. In that restraint, authority becomes visible without ever being declared. A calm voice under pressure is not performance. It is evidence. Evidence that you do not chase control outside because you already possess it inside. Evidence that conflict does not move you unless you decide to move. Evidence that strength is not measured in decibels, but in the distance between emotion and reaction, a distance you choose to maintain even when the room tries to pull you out of yourself. Lesson 3. Restraint as a form of dominance in conflict shows why strong men speak without raising their voice, and why loud men are weak the moment tension appears. Conflict exposes what a man truly controls. The one who rushes to shout is not asserting power. He is surrendering to the force he cannot tame inside himself. But the man who keeps his voice calm while pressure rises proves something louder than noise. He is not governed by the moment. He governs himself. And when a man governs himself, the conflict bends around him instead of dragging him into chaos. Why does restraint disarm aggression? Why does composure unsettle those who expect escalation? A loud man believes domination means overpowering the other person. He thinks conflict is a contest of force, and volume is his only weapon. Yet every raised syllable betrays dependence. He needs noise to feel tall. He needs reaction to feel relevant. Strip the reaction away, and his intensity collapses under its own weight. You do not challenge him by matching his tone. You challenge him by refusing to give him the environment his weakness requires. In that refusal, a different kind of dominance appears, one that does not advertise itself, yet cannot be resisted. Restraint is dominance without display. Consider a workplace confrontation where accusations rise, gestures sharpen, and voices attempt to claim territory. Most men feel the pull to respond in kind, but when you remain controlled, when your speech stays measured and your expression steady, something shifts. The loud man begins to reveal his desperation. His urgency grows, his arguments unravel, his words multiply while their meaning shrinks. He thinks he is pressing forward, but he is only exposing how little command he has over himself. Meanwhile, your restraint narrows the space. Every sentence you deliver becomes heavier because it arrives without noise carrying it. There is a reason time has proven that men who win conflicts rarely need to raise their voice. They understand that conflict is not decided by volume, but by gravity. Loud men react outward because they cannot hold the pressure inside. Strong men absorb the pressure, and that ability creates a quiet force that others feel before they understand it. Ask yourself, what truly dominates a room? The man who explodes, or the man who does not need to? Which one stands firm when emotion surges? Which one can wait without trembling, speak without rushing, remain unmoved while another man burns energy trying to provoke him? Restraint does not mean avoidance. It does not mean passivity. It means choosing not to give your power away in the most common currency of weak men: noise. It means allowing conflict to reveal character, his and yours, while you hold your ground without exhibition. And as the noise fades, as the tension searches for somewhere to land and finds no opening in you, authority settles in silence, and the other man finally realizes that the conflict never belonged to him at all. Lesson 4. Words that cut deeper, when delivered without force, reveal why strong men speak without raising their voice, and why loud men are weak the moment they try to compensate for lack of substance with noise. A raised voice is blunt. It strikes the surface, makes impact for a second, then fades. But a calm sentence, spoken with control and conviction, moves past the surface and settles where noise cannot reach. When a man refuses to shout, his words stop trying to overpower the other person and instead begin to expose reality. Why does a quiet statement linger longer than an angry outburst? Why does measured speech leave a mark that volume never can? A loud man believes intensity gives his words strength. He mistakes force for depth and shock for authority. But when emotion does the speaking, the message dissolves inside it. People stop hearing the meaning and start reacting to the noise. The man who speaks calmly does the opposite. He removes everything unnecessary, leaving only truth under restraint. And truth delivered without force does not need permission to be felt. It enters quietly, and once it enters, it does not leave. Soft tone, hard meaning. One sentence like that, spoken without emphasis, can cut through an argument more sharply than anger ever could. Picture a moment where someone expects confrontation, voices rising, gestures hardening, tension building. Instead, you answer with steady tone, deliberate pacing, expression unmoved. Your words do not rush, they do not plead, they do not compete, they simply land. The other man hears them, but more importantly, he must now sit with them. There is nothing for him to fight against because you gave him no aggression to push back on. The absence of force removes his excuse to dismiss what you said. He cannot hide behind noise. He must face meaning, and meaning, when it stands alone, becomes unavoidable. Time has already proven that the words people remember most are rarely shouted. They are spoken from a place that does not waver when challenged. Loud men rely on reaction to feel impact. If no one reacts, they feel empty. Strong men do not need reaction. They know that real impact is not immediate. It unfolds in silence after the conversation ends. Ask yourself which words have stayed with you longer, the ones someone yelled or the ones spoken calmly that exposed something you did not want to admit. Which voice sounded powerful in the moment, and which voice followed you home in your thoughts? When your voice remains calm, your listener cannot accuse you of rage, insecurity, or loss of control. The message stands alone, unprotected and unarmed, and precisely because it stands alone, it becomes heavier. A man who shouts tries to force acknowledgement. A man who speaks calmly makes acknowledgement inevitable. There is no spectacle to hide behind, no drama to absorb attention, no noise to drown out the truth. Only the weight of the words themselves and the discipline of the man who refused to raise his voice while delivering them. And that discipline creates an authority that cannot be manufactured. It is not loud, but it is undeniable. It does not chase impact, yet it leaves impact behind. It does not try to win the moment, because it is not competing with the moment. It lets silence do the work that force never could. Lesson 5. How composure exposes insecurity in loud men goes to the core of why strong men speak without raising their voice, and why loud men are weak the moment they rely on noise to hold themselves together. When a man loses composure, his volume rises. His gestures sharpen, his breathing quickens. He thinks he is becoming more dominant, but what he is really doing is confessing something he cannot admit aloud. He does not feel safe inside his own position. Calm speech exposes this without confrontation. You do not attack him, you simply refuse to unravel with him. And in that refusal, his insecurity has nowhere to hide. Why does your composure make him feel smaller? Why does his voice rise as yours remains still? A loud man believes that intensity protects him. He uses sound to drown out doubt. He uses aggression to shield the parts of himself he cannot control. But composure is a mirror, and mirrors are unforgiving. When you remain steady while he escalates, the contrast reveals the truth he is trying to conceal. His outburst stops looking like strength and starts looking like fear in motion. The more noise he produces, the more obvious the imbalance becomes. You do not need to call it out. You let the moment do that work for you. Noise is panic disguised as power. One line like that, spoken calmly, can unmask what shouting tries to conceal. Imagine a heated discussion where a man insists on being heard through force. He leans forward. He interrupts. He demands reaction. But you do not give him what he expects. Your breathing stays controlled. Your posture remains grounded. Your voice does not chase him. Instead of fighting for ground, you hold your own. And something happens that he did not prepare for. His intensity begins to look unnecessary. Others in the room shift their perception. They no longer see confidence. They see agitation. They no longer see authority. They see dependence on volume to maintain identity. Your composure did not defeat him. It revealed him. Time has already shown that the men who lack inner security need the outside world to constantly confirm them. Loudness becomes their shield. Anger becomes their proof of importance. But when that world refuses to echo them back, the shield cracks. Without reaction to feed it, their noise collapses under its own weight. Ask yourself what kind of strength requires constant demonstration. What kind of authority needs to announce itself every few seconds just to remain standing? True authority does not chase validation. It does not beg to be noticed. It does not need sound to exist. Composure is not indifference. It is not emotional distance. It is ownership. Ownership over tone, over reaction, over the space between stimulus and response. Loud men fear that space because silence forces them to face themselves. Strong men live there, and from that place they speak without raising their voice, not to appear superior, but because they have nothing to prove. The moment remains tight, the tension remains present, but you remain unmoved. And, in that stillness, insecurity exposes itself without a single word raised. Lesson 6. The discipline of measured tone under pressure shows why strong men speak without raising their voice, and why loud men are weak the moment tension begins to press against them from the inside. Pressure does not create character, it reveals it. When the environment tightens, when stakes rise, when emotions begin to swell beneath the surface, most men allow the moment to seize control of their voice. Their tone sharpens, their pace accelerates, their volume climbs, as if noise could hold the situation together. But a disciplined man refuses to surrender his voice to the environment. He does not let pressure decide how he will sound. He decides. Why do some men collapse outward when stress appears, while others grow quieter, slower, and more deliberate? A loud man believes that pressure justifies escalation. He feels tension and instantly reacts, as if volume were a necessary survival response. He convinces himself that urgency requires force, and in doing so, he exposes dependence on impulse. His words stop being choices and become symptoms, but the man who disciplines his tone under pressure moves in the opposite direction. He slows where others rush. He breathes where others tighten. He allows silence to exist between sentences instead of filling every gap with sound. And in that restraint, he proves that he does not live at the mercy of the moment. Pressure does not choose your tone. You do. One line like that, spoken steadily, can separate control from reaction in an instant. Imagine a negotiation turning tense, a conversation drifting toward conflict, a room thick with impatience. The undisciplined man raises his voice because he fears losing ground. He mistakes intensity for influence. Yet the disciplined man does something different. His tone remains measured, each word released only when needed, his presence unhurried even as the situation strains. Others feel the contrast before they understand it. They sense that his calm is not passivity, but containment. They sense that while they are reacting to the pressure, he is containing it. And containment always holds more authority than expression. Time has proven that situations governed by emotion collapse, while situations governed by discipline stabilize. A loud man tries to stabilize the moment by overpowering it, but pressure only multiplies when force meets force. The measured tone absorbs the shock instead of amplifying it. Ask yourself what truly steadies a conversation under strain, the voice that explodes outward, or the one that remains grounded no matter how tight the moment becomes. Which man looks fragile and which man looks immovable? Which one appears desperate to be heard and which one sounds certain that he already is? Discipline of tone is the quiet boundary that pressure cannot cross. It is the refusal to let adrenaline write your sentences. It is the choice to speak from conviction rather than reaction, even when emotions attempt to seize the steering wheel. Loud men believe the world must adjust to their urgency. Strong men adjust themselves first, then let the world respond to that steadiness. And as the room strains, as voices around you rise, as tension hunts for someone to inhabit, your tone remains measured, your words remain controlled, and the pressure discovers that it cannot command you. Lesson 7. Earning respect through stillness, not performance, reveals another reason strong men speak without raising their voice, and why loud men are weak the moment they try to manufacture authority through display. Respect that must be demanded is never real. The man who performs, who raises his voice, exaggerates his gestures, forces intensity into every sentence, is not communicating strength. He is auditioning for it. He wants the room to respond so he can feel tall for a moment. But when your voice remains calm and your presence remains still, something different happens. People do not react to you. They orient themselves around you. Why does stillness command what performance fails to achieve? Why does the quiet man hold a room more firmly than the one trying to dominate it? A loud man lives on external validation. His confidence breathes only when others feed it. He believes attention equals respect, so he chases attention at any cost. But the man who remains still carries a different kind of gravity. He does not rush to fill silence. He does not compete for space. He allows the moment to come to him. And in that patience, others begin to feel a boundary they did not expect, a line that exists without being declared. Stillness is presence without performance. One line like that, spoken in a controlled tone, separates those who need recognition from those who do not depend on it at all. Picture a meeting, a disagreement, a tense discussion where voices rise and opinions collide. One man pushes his words outward, trying to overwhelm the room with sound. Another man sits steady, posture grounded, voice measured, expression composed. He speaks less, but when he does, the room quiets, not out of fear, but out of recognition. Which man holds authority in that moment, the one demanding attention, or the one who receives it without effort? Which one appears powerful, and which one appears dependent on reaction to feel significant? Time has proven that stillness carries more weight than display, because stillness cannot be faked under pressure. Ask yourself what kind of strength needs to constantly announce itself, what kind of confidence requires noise to survive. Performance collapses the moment applause disappears. Stillness remains, even when no one is watching. The quiet man does not need to prove he is in control. His restraint proves it for him. The loud man insists he is not insecure, yet every raised syllable betrays the fear beneath his voice. The still man never says he is strong, yet everyone feels it before he speaks. Respect earned through stillness endures because it is not negotiated. It is not bartered through intimidation. It is not purchased with volume. It emerges when a man refuses to perform for approval, when he chooses discipline over display, and when his presence carries more truth than his words ever need to. Others sense it. They adjust their tone. They measure themselves differently around him, not because he forced them to, but because stillness made force unnecessary. Lesson 8. Speaking from conviction instead of ego shows why strong men speak without raising their voice, and why loud men are weak the moment their identity becomes tied to being right. A calm voice does not come from indifference, it comes from certainty. When a man speaks from conviction, he does not need to dominate the room, persuade through intimidation, or inflate his tone to hold authority. His words are grounded in clarity, not vanity. But when a man speaks from ego, volume becomes his crutch. He raises his voice because he is terrified of losing the argument that keeps his image intact. Why does conviction stay calm while ego becomes loud? Why does the insecure man fight to be heard while the grounded man simply states his truth and stops? A loud man treats every disagreement like an attack on his identity. He argues to protect himself, not to pursue what is true. That is why his voice climbs, because fear sits beneath his confidence. The calm man stands on conviction. He is not defending an image. He is standing inside a principle. And principles do not require noise to exist. They do not tremble under challenge. They do not panic when questioned. Conviction does not shout, it stands. One sentence like that, delivered without force, separates strength from ego more clearly than any debate ever could. Imagine a conversation where a man refuses to back down, not because he is right, but because he cannot tolerate the thought of appearing small. He interrupts. He grows louder. He repeats himself with more intensity each time. He is not communicating. He is trying to survive. Across from him, another man speaks from conviction. His tone does not rise. His pace does not change. He is willing to clarify, but he will not perform. He states his position, supports it, and remains still even as the other man grows agitated. Who holds authority in that exchange? The man defending his ego or the man defending his principle? Time has proven that truth does not strengthen through noise. It strengthens through alignment between word and self. When a man speaks from conviction, his tone carries weight precisely because it is unaffected by reaction. He is not hunting for approval. He is not negotiating dignity. He is not trying to win the moment. Loud men cannot understand this because ego survives only through external reinforcement. Without applause, their confidence dissolves. Without resistance to push against, they feel invisible. So they manufacture intensity to avoid facing the emptiness beneath it. Ask yourself what happens inside you when your pride is threatened. Do you feel your voice tighten? Does the urge to raise it come from truth or from fear of losing significance? Strong men refuse to serve that fear. They choose alignment over image. They allow disagreement without collapse. They accept being misunderstood without raising their voice to force recognition. Conviction gives them permission to remain calm because conviction does not vanish when someone rejects it. And that calm exposes the weakness of men who argue from ego. Their volume grows louder as their certainty grows thinner. Their posture stiffens as their insecurity rises to the surface. They believe they are winning ground, yet every shouted word reveals dependence on approval they cannot live without. The man of conviction does not chase that approval. He does not inflate himself to appear strong. He speaks, he remains grounded, and the room eventually recognizes that strength does not need to prove itself to anyone. Lesson 9. Silence, as a boundary that others cannot cross, reveals why strong men speak without raising their voice, and why loud men are weak the moment they try to invade space through noise. A calm man does not need to push outward to defend himself. He does not expand his voice, does not widen his gestures, does not flood the room with sound. Instead, he creates a boundary that does not exist in volume, but in presence. Silence becomes a line that says, without force, you do not enter here. Why does this unsettle loud men? Why does a boundary they cannot see feel stronger than one they try to shout through? A loud man believes that if he raises his voice, he can cross into another man's territory. He thinks sound allows him to occupy space that does not belong to him. But silence denies him entry. When you do not react, when your tone remains steady, when your posture refuses to yield, he discovers that noise has no power where restraint governs the ground. He wanted conflict because conflict would justify his weakness. Instead, he meets a wall that does not move. Silence is not absence, it is refusal. One line like that, spoken without emphasis, turns noise into futility. Picture a confrontation where someone stands too close, speaks too loudly, tries to pull you into escalation. Most men respond by matching energy, feeding the tension until it grows teeth. But you do not move. Your words remain calm, your eyes hold steady. You let the moment rest in the air instead of reacting to it. The loud man feels the boundary long before he understands it. His voice rises because he cannot cross it. His frustration increases because nothing inside you opens to receive his aggression. He came to conquer a reaction. He finds none. And in that void, his strength evaporates. Time has already proven that the strongest boundaries are not shouted, they are lived. The man who needs to declare dominance lacks it. The man who does not declare anything already possesses what the other is chasing. Ask yourself what happens when someone tries to provoke you and you refuse to participate. Do they gain power? Or do they exhaust themselves against a surface that will not respond? Which man remains intact after the moment passes, and which man is left exposed by his own noise? Silence as a boundary is not withdrawal. It is ownership of the space within yourself. It is the decision to protect your dignity without turning conflict into spectacle. Loud men misread it at first. They call it weakness. They push harder. They attempt to provoke emotion so they can feel justified in collapsing into theirs. But the more they push, the more they discover that silence is not passive. It is active containment. It does not retreat. It does not explain itself. It does not invite negotiation. And that realization changes the dynamic. The room senses it. The tension shifts from you to him. His volume begins to sound excessive. His urgency reveals its own insecurity. He came believing that dominance was something he could force from the outside. Instead, he meets a strength rooted so deeply that no raised voice can reach it. The moment remains tense, but you remain immovable, and the boundary holds without a single increase in sound. Lesson 10. When quiet confidence ends arguments before they begin, it shows why strong men speak without raising their voice, and why loud men are weak the moment they try to drag every disagreement into conflict. Some arguments never start because one man refuses to supply the chaos they require to exist. His tone remains calm. His posture stays grounded. His words arrive without urgency. And suddenly, the other man no longer has the fuel he came looking for. An argument cannot grow where there is nothing to push against. Why does quiet confidence dissolve confrontation before it forms? Why do men who arrive ready to fight lose momentum the instant they face restraint instead of resistance? A loud man needs conflict to validate himself. He wants escalation because escalation hides the emptiness beneath his certainty. He expects noise, reaction, and emotional heat to give his position structure. But when he meets a man who speaks slowly, clearly, and with unwavering composure, something inside him falters. He came prepared for battle and instead encounters a wall of calm that does not return fire. His arguments lose shape. His aggression loses direction. He begins to sense that he is the only one fighting. Confidence does not chase conflict. It renders conflict unnecessary. One line like that, spoken without emphasis, removes the air from the confrontation before it can expand. Imagine a moment where tension gathers, a misunderstanding, a sharp tone, a brewing challenge. Most men tighten their voice, harden their expression, and prepare to defend themselves. But the confident man does not accelerate with the moment. He slows it. His response is measured. His breathing remains steady. He answers without edge, without threat, without the need to overpower. And suddenly, the other man must confront his own intent without a mirror of aggression to justify it. The argument that was about to form now has no place to stand. The room shifts not because authority was asserted loudly, but because confidence did not allow the spark to find oxygen. Time has already proven that arguments rarely begin because of disagreement alone. They begin because ego needs a stage. Loud men search for that stage in every conversation, and when they do not find resistance, they are forced to face themselves instead. Ask yourself what happens when someone tries to provoke you and you refuse to supply tension. Does the conflict grow, or does it collapse under its own weight? Which man walks away intact, and which one realizes that his anger had nowhere legitimate to land? Quiet confidence is not avoidance. It is strength that refuses to waste itself. It recognizes that not every confrontation deserves life, and not every challenge deserves reaction. The man who carries this kind of confidence does not fear disagreement, but he does not feed it either. His calm voice signals that he is anchored, not threatened, and the moment bends toward that stability. The loud man feels it first as frustration, then as recognition. There is nothing here he can dominate, because there is nothing here he can provoke. And as the moment settles, as the tension drains without spectacle, the truth becomes visible. The argument never required victory. It simply required a man who did not need to prove himself to anyone, who allowed composure to speak where volume could not, who ended the confrontation not by defeating it, but by standing so firmly that it never truly began. If this spoke to you, stay here. Subscribe and return when you're ready to confront yourself in silence. And if something in this lesson challenged you, leave your thoughts in the comments. Say only what is necessary.